We're learning we're learning the Sicha for Shabbos, Parshas Vayigash, the 7th of Teves, Tafshin Lamed Beis, around 1972. That Shabbos, the Rebbe said a very well-known mimer, which is known as the mimer V'David Avdi Nasi Lahem La'olam, which is on the Haftarah. Now we're going to learn the Farbrengen about which the Rebbe said this mimer. So it says here like this: Kvoi Kiddush is Ad Mishlita Kiddush al Yain. He made Kiddush on the wine of Shabbos. And he said like this: Parshas Vayigash, excuse me, Misuper Oidis Haschalas Inin Hagalas Eitzel Yaakov Uvanav. Technically, the Galus starts this week. The Jewish people go to the Mitzrayim. With regard to Yaakov himself, we already had the verse that says, "Im Lavan Garti," that he was by Lavan. Garti, he was a ger, so he wasn't in his home. Shazau Inyan Shagalas already. Yaakov started Galus when he went to Lavan. That started when Yaakov left Beersheva and went to Haran. More than that. When we want to do the math, it's a famous Gemara, we want to do the math of 430 years that the Jewish people were in exile. Shiashva b'nei Yisrael Geirim be'eretz lahem, that they were foreigners, not in their land. Maschil kvar lefnei leidus Yitzchak, even before Yitzchak is born, is when the idea of Galus started, so to say, the 430 years. So what happened to Vayigash? Means Yaakov himself personally had already his life in Lavan, which was a kind of Galus. From when Avram went to Eretz Plishtim, it says that's already starting the Galus. So what is unique about this week's parsha? That the Rashi that the Rebbe says that what happens here is that before that it was always a private story. It was Avram lived here, Yitzchak lived there, Yaakov lived there. Now it becomes that the Yaakov and his family, his children, although he had children by Lavan, but that he went down into Galus like that started in Vayigash. So the Rebbe says even though the Shvatim were in Charan, they were by their grandfather. By Zaidi Lovin. They didn't look at it as a gullus. They lived it. That's where they came from. And Yaakov raised a complete bed, so to say, a complete family in Lavan's home. So they looked at it. That was all good. That they didn't feel gullus in Lavan's house or in Charan. Excuse me. The definition of gullus is that you go from your place to someplace else, but they were born there. That for them, it's the idea of galus is to leave a place of gilia likus, revelation of godliness, to descend into a situation of galus. But Akasha Yaakov of boy Mitzrayim, when they come into Mitzrayim, Azai Hischol Galus Mitzrayim. That's when it really started. The last 210 years, Shazau Galus Klali, K'mayim Razal, Kol Galus Nikra Moshe Mitzrayim. And it's not just any. It's the Galus of Mitzrayim that all other exiles afterwards are known as a comparison to the Galus of Mitzrayim, the exile of Mitzrayim. The Rebbe continues, V'zeotam shedavka kan amar Kadosh Baruch Hu Yaakov al tira mer de Mitzrayim. This is where we find clearly that Hashem tells Yaakov, don't be scared, al tira, don't be scared to go to Mitzrayim. Given shkan his chalamitas in Nagos, because in Vayigash, although we had different Geras, so to say, foreign. Avram was foreign by Avimelech, and Yitzchak lived in Gerar and all that. But that's not the level of Altira that Hashem had to say to Yaakov, Altira, married to Mitzrayim, don't be scared to go into Mitzrayim, because here started the real Galus. We find that Yaakov asks Hashem when he goes to Vayetze, when he leaves to Lavan's home, he also asked Hashem to watch him on this situation. It wasn't about the Galus. That he's going on the way. He's going. When a person travels, there's danger. We know from this week's parsha, last week's parsha, Yaakov doesn't want to send Binyamin because the derech is a cheskas sakana. To travel in general is dangerous. But the idea of going into Galus, that we find unique in this week's parsha. And that's why Hashem has to tell him, don't be fearful. Moving atzarech v'habarazu. Why did we need Hashem to tell Yaakov, don't be scared to go to Mitzrayim? Because Yaakov could have questioned in his thoughts, he says, he could have thought, he could have questioned, why does he have to go to exile? What's going on over here? Why do we have to do this? With Frat, specifically, he may ask, page 14, Aviv Yitzchak Nemar, when it comes to his father, it says, Al Teirid Mitzrayim, don't go to Egypt. Gur Ba'aretz Hazayis, live in Eretz Yisrael. B'hainu, Sheneser Alav Letzas Meretz Yisrael. For Yitzchak, it was forbidden. And here Yaakov has to go. This is what it says before. This is the continuation that Rashi brings down, that what is he, that he sacrifices a sacrifice to his father Yitzchak. It says, it doesn't mention Yaakov, so Rashi says, from here on, you have to give more covet to your father than your grandfather. He says, that he says that he made a sacrifice to his father in honor, to dedicate it to his father Yitzchak, to the God of his father Yitzchak. Why does he only make the korban, the sacrifice, as an honor or memory for Yitzchak and not for Avram? So Rashi asks, that's an obvious question, so much so that Rashi feels the need to answer the question. Rashi answers it in a simple way, like I said, because he's honoring his father over his grandfather. But the Rebbe says, even according to the simple explanation, he could have just said my father without singling out Yitzchak and leaving out Avram, by just saying my father, and then it would be attributed to his father Yitzchak, and Yitzchak comes from Avram. So it was explained in other places. Yaakov wasn't actually just doing a sacrifice. He was also claiming, he had a claim, a taina. What was his taina? He mentioned Yitzchak. Why? Because I'm about to go to Mitzrayim, but Yitzchak was forbidden to go to Mitzrayim. Yitzchak also, he was in Galus, he was part of the 430 years, he was in Gror, but he was able to do it in a way that he was able to stay in Eretz Yisrael. He has to go outside of Eretz Yisrael to do the job of Galus, which is the engaging of birurim, of elevating and separating the sparks. And he's kind of made a mizbeach, mentioning his father, kind of in a way to bring up a point. Why was Yitzchak able to do his avodah while staying in Eretz Yisrael, and I have to go to Galus? This is Befrat, not only that, we know that it's when it comes to elevating the sparks, Yitzchak was very powerful at that. Find that Avram's avodah was all about giving, chasadim, doing kindness. Kavachesed, attributes of kindness. Milmai lamata, from above down. Meaning to say, what does it mean above down? He overpowers people with his kindness, doesn't change them. Yaakov was balanced, both chesed and gvura. However, Yitzchak's avodah was, he was all about elevating from above down, up. Means to find the sparks from within and transforming the person. So Yitzchak's actually, because Yaakov is a balance between the two. So Yitzchak's actually the more extreme when it comes to the avodah of birurim, and nevertheless he was able to do it in Eretz Yisrael. The whole idea of birurim is to elevate from below above. The became nevertheless. Yitzchak could stay in Eretz Yisrael. And Yaakov has to go down to Mitzrayim. So the Rebbe is saying that Hashem had to give special encouragement to Yaakov, and Yaakov could have thought, and possibly he did think, and we see in the fact that he attributes the mizbeach to his father. So God's response to Yaakov is, Al tira mered Mitzrayim. Don't be fearful. Don't be scared to go to Mitzrayim. Ella shadayin ein zebir madua Allah lerdis Mitzrayim. He tells us that Hashem tells him don't be scared. It doesn't explain why. Madua, he says, ein bir madua Allah lerdis Mitzrayim. But still, why do I have? His question is a good question. Sharei mutiv lishar beretz Yisrael. Why couldn't he remain in Eretz Yisrael? Why does he have to go to Golis in Mitzrayim? It says, and it wasn't enough that Yaakov has to go down to Mitzrayim only because of Kabbalah Sol. He's accepting the yoke, but Imamish doesn't want to go down. A person has to do their avodah with simcha, like it says, Ivdas Shem Simcha. And therefore, it wasn't enough that God should tell him, don't be scared, because don't be scared doesn't answer the question. It just says, I have to do it. But then the person goes down begrudgingly that without any simcha. So therefore, Hashem had to continue to Yaakov. Because your greatness only happens there. I will make you a great nation there. Only by going to Mitzrayim. Sham. That's when you will become a higher elevation that you cannot get in Eretz Yisrael. The Goy Gadol is only going to happen in Mitzrayim, the great nation. That I, Anoichi, the level of Anoichi, which is the highest level of Hashem, will elevate with you. That means you reach the level of Anoichi only by going down to Mitzrayim. As explained in Torah, that's not just one aliyah. He has a double elevation because he went into descent into Mitzrayim. And when is the second elevation? So the Rebbe says, that's talking about when Mashiach comes, we're going to have another, the higher elevation, that's all part of the elevation out of the story of Yaakov going down to Mitzrayim. It was all long, we're going through one long story, even though we've had obviously patches of Geula and Beis Hamikdash, etc. So the Rebbe continues, page 15, Sivkimo. But you've been behind him, to understand, we find about Yitzchak Kislev, it says, Shoaderech Ma'amrazal, Ma Zayis Eine Moitzi Shamnai Elai De Kasisa. It's brought down about an oil, about olive, that how does the olive give off oil? Only you have to crush it. That's no other way. What's the idea? That the oil, Ma Zayis, the Zayis is the olive, Eine Moitzi Shamnai, doesn't give out its oil, Elai De Kasisa, has to go through being pressed. What's the idea? Metzias Hashemen Yeshna Kfar Oidif Nea HaKatisha. The oil exists before. It's in the olive, it exists. Shari Hashemen Eine Muvla Bibaser Mamoshes Hazais. It's not its own, it's not part of the flesh, so to say, of the olive. It's kept there. Almost like a grape that holds the wine. Can move it Rashi. Rashi defines the oil. It says it appears zayis shemen zayis agure shamnei oger b'toiche. Rashi clearly says that. What does it mean, olive oil? That a zayis is an olive that has its oil oger b'toiche held inside of it, but the oil is there on its own. It already exists. It means you don't create the oil by pressing it. You release the oil by pressing it. It's concealed. The alpha became, nevertheless, the only way to get it out, you can't cut the olive in half. You have to press the olive. Without breaking it, you're not going to get the oil. Without crushing it. Now we understand the importance. This is an idea that's brought down many times in Chassidus. That the only way to get the oil is you have to crush it, which is the idea of bittul, which I'm sure he's going to go into now. So he said, the importance of the crushing, that through that is megalis Hashem and Zayis. That's the only way to reveal the oil from the olive. Zayis v'shemen, the Rebbe says, in olive and oil, they're not only two parts. There's the olive, the fruit, and then there's the oil. The Rebbe says they're actually two opposites. Minakotza elakotza, two extremes. They're actually totally contradictions. Shari Zayis, what is an oil? What is an olive? Sorry. It's a bitter fruit. It's not a sweet fruit. Miriris means bitter. Charif is sharp. When it comes to the laws of taruves, we know that different foods that are charif and marar and bitter have a different halacha because they're more powerful as far as their taste being mixed into other foods. Taruvis means to have mixed foods, which could be anything. Kosher, basar v'chalav if you mix meat and milk, but if you mix also other foods, and there could be non fruits that are zayis that wasn't taken tithings, etc. Masha enkein shemen leizu b'vacha eni charif. We don't find that olive oil is bitter or sharp. It creates light. Light is not sharp, and light is joy. Or causes lamar. It not only is it give out light, it becomes a source of light, a luminary. Which is the source of light, like it's explained in the Chassidus. The Rebbe says we find in Gemara in Sechles Hayriyos, Shezayis Meshakeach Limud. A person who just eats olives themselves causes a person to forget. It's Gemara, famous Gemara. So you see people, they pour olive oil on their olives. It makes a person forget what they've studied. But olive oil, the oil of the olive, makes a person, not only does it not cause to forget like the olive itself, it actually keeps a person's memory intact. It's meishiv limud. It helps a person with their memory. That's why shemen corresponds mystically to the idea of chachma, of intellect, of wisdom. Yayin is understanding, to open up your mind. Shemen is chachma. And chachma, we say, what do we say? Zikaron beinenecha. So the chachma is the concept of memory, and so oil helps a person with their memory, and the olive causes a person to forget. So we see they're opposites. One is bitter. One causes light, doesn't cause bitterness. One causes forgetfulness. One helps a person with their memory. There's no forgetfulness by Hashem, which is connected to chachma. The Rebbe says this is also not just a mystical idea that olive oil helps the memory and olives causes forgetfulness, but the Alter Rebbe brings down in halacha, in the laws of Talmud Torah, Alter Rebbe brings down halacha that if a person is punished, doesn't say what the punishment will contribute to, but maybe inside it does. And their memory starts to slip, and they can't remember what they learned. Some people have good memories, what they've learned. They learn it once and they remember. Others less. You have to continue learning. A person may say, "Why should I learn? Anything I learn, I forget." The Alter Rebbe says, halachically, even if you forget, you have to continue to learn. He says, "Vatama is not that it's just a gezerah that you have to learn. Because it's something everlasting. The Rebbe says it's not just also that it doesn't make a difference if you'll forget, because this moment you're learning Torah. The Alter Rebbe writes, he says, "L'mayla ad kisa kavod, achlei l'mayla mekisei. K'mash kasev ki ein shicha l'fnei kisa kvedecha, sh'l'mayla mekisei oila mazikarin." So the Rebbe says that your forgetfulness is. I have to look in the Alter Rebbe's Hilchos Talmud Torah. The Alter Rebbe says that forgetfulness is only up until the chair. But past the chair, there's no forgetfulness, and therefore, maybe in this world, in your space of consciousness, you're forgetful. But beyond this chair, there's no forgetfulness, and therefore, you have to always learn Torah. It doesn't go beyond the kisei. It says, in the world of memory, past the chair or from the chair and above, it's all about memory, and therefore, in that space of your being, of the soul, there's no forgetfulness. Meaning to say that the forgetfulness is not the essence of the person. That the person who forgets something is that it no longer exists by them. It just no longer exists in their lower levels of understanding of memory, but at the core of their soul, it still is there. That's why sometimes we have it's actually, you see it really actually live when I don't know, I don't think I have the best memory, let's say, for when I learn. but in my chachma, it's there. So sometimes something I learned that I won't remember, but there'll be a trigger at some point from something I've once learned. So that's because that comes from chachma. So chachma, there's no forgetfulness. In the bina and understanding, clarity, there's forgetfulness. We said Raim Gadol Masa Haktisha. This is where we see the whole point of crushing. That only through crushing the olive do we leave all the negativity of the zayis, bitterness, sharpness, forgetfulness, and we get to the shemen, which is light, happiness, and memory. And this is a comparison. We know that the idea he started off saying in Sif Gimel that it's brought down about the Jewish people are compared to Zayis. So too, this is the idea of Golus. You do a Teres of Hashem Tov. It's known the teaching of the Holy Baal Shem Tov. He says on the verse, "Kitiu atem eretz chayfes," that you, the Jewish people, will be a land of desire. Shekneses Yisrael nikras eretz chayfes. Baal Shem Tov teaches that the Jewish people are called a land of desire. But dugmas haaretz, just like the earth. Shetoimnim ba oitzis yikarim. There's many treasures buried inside the earth. Just we don't know where it is. We have to find it. Every single yid is full of hidden treasures buried within inside him or her. And those treasures is why God has a desire for the land. It brings inner joy, knowing that God says that every person is a treasure, is a home is buried inside this person. Tremendous potential of treasures. Al-Gdei says, how do we get the treasure? How do we reveal the treasure? You have to dig. That's the idea of crushing the olive. That only through crushing the olive do we get the oil. You have to dig to find the treasure. This is the idea of Golus, that Yaakov Avinu is told by Hashem, only there you'll become a great nation. There you'll reveal your treasures. Only that, only going through the idea of causes, of crushing, does a person get the treasures taken out of them. Alter Rebbe mentions this. We've learned this many times. The idea of a boy miyashrish Yaakov. That Yaakov roots. Only from there is Yosef Zeparach Yisrael grows out Yisrael. Just like something that grows through planting. You can't just hide the seed. Even if you were to put the seeds in the most valuable vessels of gold and silver, nothing comes from the seed. There'll be no growth. You have to dig a hole and put it in the lowest place in the earth, and only in the earth will the seed become to a tree. And it's not just that. After you put it in the earth, the seed rots. Nirkov, the seed rots, decomposes. And only after it goes through that second stage. So the first stage is being placed in dirt. Get out of your comfort, right? You can't just put the seed in a gold cup. To go be put into the dirt and and only then next stages you have to dig, it has to dissolve. And only then it grows into something proper. So to the Jewish people. Only by be rooted into the earth. That's the self-nullification, like I said. The nafshi offer the koltia, that my soul feels like dirt to everyone. Shnasai the inyan golus, that's caused by golus of our experiences and difficulties and sometimes belittling in golus. Azai nasis asmicha, that allows for the growth. Yatzis Parach Yisrael, that will grow out and spurt out Israel. Zeu gam hasbara batzarich shbinin hayigia. The Rebbe says this is also one of the ideas of why it's so important for a person to toil in Torah mitzvahs. Why can't it just be easy? The Gemara teaches us in Chagiga, I think, right? 38 Megillah, sorry. That lo yigay to mitzvah al tamin. If a person says, I didn't toil, and I found life, I found Torah, I found happiness, I found success, al tamin, don't believe that person. It doesn't exist. That if you don't toil, you'll be able to. You can't bypass the system. Only through toiling is you're going to find. And if a person says, I didn't toil, that means you did, then he or she didn't find. The Rebbe says seemingly one could ask the question on this Gemara. We see clearly that they're talented people. Should be kala with a little bit of effort of contemplation. The lo yegia without too much toil. They can understand a lot of ideas. Some people are more successful with less effort. How can we say that lo yegata umatzas tamen, that if a person doesn't toil, we see clearly there's certain very smart, talented people that don't have to toil, especially when it comes to learning. The idea is like this. It's brought down in the Kuntas Ma'ayin of the Rebbe Rashab. Even a person who has great, broad vessels of their mind, and it's easy for them, meaning for them to understand ideas. You can't be satisfied and say, 1 second, everyone else in my class, or everyone else in my yeshiva, or whatever, will put in this amount of effort, tremendous effort to understand it. I'm smart, I can understand it easier. So I'm in the same place with everyone else. I understand it without the effort. So that the Rebbe Shab says in Kuntas Ma'ayin, tzarech esek v'yigiyah, it doesn't help. You have to, the toil is part of Torah. If a person doesn't toil, you're only going to reach your limits. Yeah, maybe your limits are greater than someone else's toiling. That's why we say, your ma'od. For your ma'od, for something that's very difficult for you, could be something simple for someone else, but it's your ma'od. So too, over here, you're trying to measure about someone else's efforts, and you don't have to, you could reach the same level without any effort. That means that you haven't reached past your limits. When a person toils, then what's a mitzvah? Mitzvah is to find something that's beyond your limitations, right? It's not called a mitzvah. A mitzvah means, what does a mitzvah mean? I found something. It means if you were supposed to get it, it wouldn't be finding something. It means you're finding something that's beyond, something special. So how do you get to mitzvah? There's only through yigiyah. You want to reach higher than your limitations, than your capabilities. Like finding something that wasn't there before. It says, when the Gemara says that one of the things that comes to a person, when you're not paying attention, is a mitzvah. And so the Rebbe explains many times, what does it mean hesach hadas? Beyond das. A mitzvah has to be beyond your capabilities. And if a person, even the smartest person, will toil, they will reach the higher heights than they could have without the toiling. It becomes an obligation. You must try to do yigiyah, because you must get to mitzvah, which is beyond your limitations. It's not just that you're being extra, you're doing a hidr, a special minhag. And if the person doesn't do yagaita, then he didn't do, or she didn't do according to what they have to do. Let's go a little further. The Rebbe said like this: Yesh l'haisa, we could add, that through gullus, through toiling, through difficulties, a person receives through yigiyah, you get to mitzvah. Only there you'll become a great nation. It's not just talking about Yaakov or someone like Yaakov on that level. Every single yid. Not just as a Jew who's part of the community, because of the community. Even a person as an individual. That the Rebbe is saying that a person may think, okay, there's growth, there's what to say about toiling and difficulties when the community goes through something difficult. What about my own personal galus, my own personal experience? This is what it says in the verse. These are the children that came down to Egypt, Yaakov and his sons. And it mentions each child not as a group, but as an individual. Yaakov, Ruvain, Bnei Ruvain, Bnei Shimon, Ele Bnei Leah, Ele Bnei Zilpa, Ele Bnei Rachel, each individual person that came down. Ele Bnei Bilha. It's not just about Yaakov. The Yaakov going to Galus will have growth. over his wives. Every person that goes through gullus, whether it's a gullus klali or a gullus prati, but as an individual, you have within you the ability that through going through gullus, you're going to become something great. That means our own challenges that can be very difficult. And you say, okay, Jewish people as a whole go through growth through going through gullus, but what does it help me? The person may ask the same question: what does it mean to me as a person? Why do I have to go through difficulties as an individual? I find that my specifics are difficult. And the Rebbe says because that idea applies to people as just not just as a group, but as an individual. Even the sons of Yosef, that he had in Egypt, they also get counted. The Kivin Shekam Hem Hayu they were in Egypt, even though their Egypt was different than the Egypt they were born there. The Rebbe quotes this idea of effect also. A person should go exile themselves to a place of Torah because you will have individual growth. The Rebbe continues. This is also about people that are finding themselves in a double exile, an exile within an exile. A person has to know, if a person feels, what does it mean an exile inside an exile? In general, the Jewish people are in exile, right? You could read in the papers all the stories of anti-Semitism or whatever's going on, whatever went on past 2,000 years as gullus. The person feels sometimes alone in their own individual gullus, what's going on separately, their own little life that's going on separately, with their own difficulties. So the Rebbe says, the person must know. God is not looking to pain a person, to tsar, to put a person through difficulties. Ela adrab, on the contrary, lefum tsara agra, how much tsar a person goes, there's going to be growth. You're going to go and come out to a greater place than you would have been as an individual, not going through your individual gullus b'toich gullus. As my father-in-law, the previous Rebbe said, when he was in prison, he said like this, the Frierdiker Rebbe says, I don't know if I would have willingly gone through this experience. But now that I went through this experience, Frierdiker Rebbe said he wouldn't have given up 1 minute of a horrible experience that affected the health of the rest of his life. He was paralyzed, crippled. I mean, it affected how he was able to function because he went through the difficulties of the time of his imprisonment. What's the reason why he wouldn't have given it up? Because of the uniqueness that he got, what he gained through that experience, he would never give up. This has to be the attitude to those who follow in the footsteps of the previous Rebbe. A person has to know that when Hashem takes you also out of your individual gullus, which a person could have a geula pratis and should have a geula pratis even before the geula kladis, before the general geula redemption. You can't get lighter. The Rebbe says you shouldn't go through the experience and say, okay, I survived, now I'm gonna kind of calm down. But you have to stay with that same energy and focus you had while you're going through the difficult times. And you're giving over your want for what Hashem wants. Not in a way that you have to be always looking for challenges, always looking for difficulties. A person sometimes has to go through individual difficulties. And Hashem is going to give you harchava. You're not going to have the difficulties. It's going to be broad. You're going to have opportunities. But nevertheless, the focus that you had during the hard times should be with you, even in the broad times. You compare to Baal Shem Tov, like the Baal Shem Tov says, "V'negoyel divrei David," what King David said, "Shnikar Naim is Miras Yisrael," the one who sang the songs of Israel. Because every Tehillim King David said was on behalf of the Klal Yisrael. He was talking every person's individual difficulties. He says, "Samach nafshi," that I thirst for God in the desert. But when I get out of the desert and I'm in the holiness, I should seek God the same way I'm seeking God in the desert. Halavai, that the Baal Shem Tov says, I wish that that when I'm in the holy place, I should see you the way I'm seeing you now from the desert. Even when I get out of the difficulties, I'm in the place of holiness. It's like I have the same thirst, desire, and thirst. When I was in a far dry place. A person has to be an example. And you have to take in to be able to give out. That by you going through sometimes personal experiences should be an example to help others become a great nation. It shouldn't be that your father went through difficult times and survived, and now everyone's just going to have a free ride. That your kids should go through that. They don't have to go through the experience, but they should have the benefit of the experience. And also those who you study with, your students. That if a person teaches someone Torah, it's as if you gave birth to them. That you should have effect on people that you didn't even engage deeply with, but even just people that you know should be affected by your solid resolve of your experiences. It means your experience should affect others, even if you don't have a direct relationship with them. That they should already also be affected to have their elevations even before you know about their situation. In Pashas, the Rebbe says, what's the bottom line? Yeshli Natsal, a person should take advantage. Possibly the Rebbe said the Sicho 1972, if I'm not mistaken. That year there was a big group of Russians that got out of Russia. So the Rebbe's talking. But that's the Rebbe's talking to everyone at all times. A person should take advantage of the time that they've had to go through actual Mesiras Nefesh. But they were there. That they should take that energy that they were so focused on staying Jewish in difficult times to even in broad times, right? When they came to Israel, to America, to have that same focus to do spreading Yiddishkeit. To spread the well springs outside. You yourself should add in learning. The kima mitzvahs and the performance of mitzvahs. You should be an example. You take in order to give out. And you're not just about yourself, but how you affect others. And through that, through us staying strong in the hard times and good times, as we were in hard times, and being an example, that will usher in hopefully the coming of Mashiach B'Karv. I wish everyone a Laila Tov, a good Shabbos, a Geula Shabbos, and hopefully we shouldn't even have to fast the whole fast. Mashiach should come. Laila Tov, take care, good Shabbos.